The very first thing to know is that your brain is strongly biased toward survival. Yes, your brain can do all sorts of wonderful things. It can solve complex mathematical equations and imagine wonderful works of art. But there's one thing you must remember. The job of your brain is to keep you alive. And therein lies the problem. Well, more specifically, therein lies the problem of a brain in the 21st century. But more of this in a moment. Thousands of years ago, survival was dependent upon a brain that could quickly identify a threat and provide an immediate safety response. So our ancestors would, for example, stumble across a wild animal, and their brains would very quickly, unthinkingly, fire up the chemistry of fear that would reliably get them away from this physical threat. You probably already know this as the fight or flight response, whereby your brain coordinates an accelerated heart rate, higher blood pressure, faster breathing, and increased muscle tension. But your brain doesn't just switch off once you're safe. After the chemistry of fear comes the chemistry of anxiety, for the purpose of avoiding places where wild animals might roam. Put simply, fear gets us away from danger, but anxiety makes sure that we stay away from danger in the future. Today, we're the safest we've ever been, but our survival-biased brains must continue to find threats in our environment. However, the threats of today relate more closely to our identity, our sense of self, the ways we think about ourselves and what we think other people think of us. For social anxiety, for example, that last bit is really important. This brings us back to the problem with the survival biased brain. It responds to these modern dangers in just the same way that it's always responded to physical danger down through the centuries. Let's put some meat on the bones of this. Imagine that you've been asked to go out for a meal with a friend who's also invited people you've never met before. You haven't been at your best lately and you start to worry about the impending invitation. Your brain goes back to other times that you've been a little bit out of sorts and you start to get anxious. Then you think, I never know what to say in big groups. Nobody's interested in what I have to say anyway. Everyone will see I'm uncomfortable. Everyone's more confident than me. Of course, these thoughts just intensify your anxiety, which is just what your brain wants to happen, because it's identified a threat that you must now stay away from. This is called avoidance behaviour. To motivate this avoidance, your brain now activates the chemical choreography of anxiety, because remember, it's fear that gets us out of immediate danger, but anxiety keeps us away from danger in the future. The evolutionary purpose of emotion is to motivate behaviour. Think about it. Love, anger, fear, they all have behavioural outcomes. They motivate us to do something. As with the wild animal episode of our ancestors, your brain must now make sure that you never forget this threat, so it etches the memory deep into your brain. We can think of this memory as a program, so effectively these types of threat responses are continuously reprogramming our brains. If you're anxious in this type of situation or any other situation of anxiety, you have a program in your brain that guides your response. So you have a ready-made thinking, feeling, doing response to this, but also to any similar situations that you encounter and avoid in your own daily life. For this to happen, the brain must be malleable. Which brings us nicely on to another vital thing to know about the problem with your brain. Your brain changes its structure with experience. This malleability of the brain is called neuroplasticity, a brain process that runs throughout this course. So it makes sense that we should turn our attention to this now.